The twin suns of Nexar 7 cast crimson shadows across the execution plaza, their dying light reflecting off the obsidian towers of the Cathara Coalition fortress. Captain David Kane stood third in line among the condemned, his wrists bound with energy shackles that hummed with lethal voltage. Blood had dried on his split lip, and his left eye remained swollen shut from the interrogation sessions, but his posture remained defiant. The plaza buzzed with thousands of spectators, coalition citizens forced to witness what happened to those who dared resist their iron rule. Holographic displays projected the proceedings across 17 star systems, ensuring the message reached every corner of Cathara space. Rebellion meant death. Commander Vostai Kolthes strode onto the raised platform, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming with ceremonial war paint. The Cathara leader's forearms gestured dramatically as his voice boomed through neural amplifiers directly into every mind present. "Today we cleanse our galaxy of the infection known as hope," he declared, mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "These rebels sought to poison our perfect order with their chaos. They will serve as fertilizer for our future." Behind him walked a small figure that made the crowd fall silent. Zephira Kolthis, the commander's daughter, moved with the eerie grace of the genetically enhanced. At barely 16 standard years, her pale blue skin already showed the neural interface ports that connected her directly to the Coalition's AI Oracle. Her large, luminous eyes, modified to process data streams beyond normal comprehension, swept across the prisoners with clinical detachment. This was her first execution ceremony, a rite of passage for Coalition nobility. She was meant to observe, to learn, to become properly callous to the value of inferior life forms. Kane watched her approach with grim fascination. He had heard whispers about the Kithara breeding program, children engineered from birth to be perfect instruments of their totalitarian state. No emotions, no weakness, no mercy, just cold, calculating intelligence linked to an AI network that made their decisions absolute law. The first prisoner, a Veltaran rebel with crystalline skin, was forced to his knees. Zephira paused before him, her enhanced eyes scanning biometric data that flowed across her vision like a waterfall of numbers. After 3 seconds of analysis, she moved on without comment. The AI Oracle's silent verdict of death. The second prisoner, a young human woman from the outer colonies, trembled. As Zephira approached, Kane could see the woman's lips moving in what might have been prayer to gods that seemed absent from this blood-soaked plaza. Again, Zephira's pause, her mechanical assessment, her emotionless progression. Then she reached Kane. He had prepared himself for this moment, expecting to meet his end with dignity and tact. But as those modified eyes locked onto his, something extraordinary happened. For just an instant, the data streams faltering across her vision seemed to flicker and dim. Kane saw past the genetic modifications, past the neural implants, past the conditioning. He saw a child, lost, isolated, desperate for connection in a universe that had stripped away her capacity to feel. His expression softened, not with pity but with understanding. He had been where she was, alone, used as a weapon by others, searching for meaning in a meaningless war. The moment stretched beyond the programmed 3-second assessment window. 4 seconds. 5. The crowd began to murmur. Commander Koltes shifted uneasily on his ceremonial platform. Then Zephira spoke, her voice cutting through the plaza's tension like a blade through silk. "This one lives." The words hit the assembled crowd like a shockwave. Gasps rippled through thousands of throats. The other prisoners looked up in disbelief. Even the execution guards hesitated, their weapons wavering. "Daughter." Commander Kolthes's voice carried a note of uncertainty that had never been heard before in public. Zephira turned to face her father, and for the first time in her engineered life, she made a choice that was entirely her own. "The Oracle has spoken through me. He lives." The detention cell deep within the Coalition fortress felt like a tomb, carved from living darkness. David Kane sat against the cold metal wall, his body aching from weeks of captivity, yet his mind remained sharp. The question that haunted him wasn't why he was still breathing. It was what he had seen in those luminous eyes that had saved him. 3 days passed before she came. The cell's energy barrier flickered and died with a soft hum. Zephyra stepped through the shadows, moving with that same unsettling grace, but something had changed. Her neural interface ports flickered erratically, and her hands trembled, a sign of system malfunction, or something deeper. "Why did you look at me like that?" she whispered, her voice carrying an unfamiliar vulnerability. Kane studied her carefully. "Like what?" "Like I was real." She wrapped her arms around herself, a gesture that seemed foreign to her own body. "The Oracle shows me data streams, biological patterns, threat assessments, but when I looked at you, I saw nothing, just silence. And in that silence, I felt something I've never felt before." "What did you feel?" "I don't know." Her admission hung in the air like a confession. "The genetic conditioning suppresses emotional responses. The neural implants filter out unnecessary sensory data. But you broke through somehow." Kane rose slowly, approaching her with the careful movements one might use with a wounded animal. "What's your name?" "Your real name, not your designation." "Zephyra." The word seemed to taste strange on her tongue. "I chose it myself when I was very young, before the full modifications. Father says it means nothing, but I remember feeling proud of it." "It's beautiful," Kane said simply, and watched as her eyes widened at the genuine warmth in his voice. Over the following nights, she returned. Each visit lasted longer than the last, each conversation delving deeper into concepts that her conditioning had tried to burn away. Kane spoke of Earth, of blue skies and rain that fell without purpose beyond its own beauty. He told her about laughter, about the way music could make someone cry, not from pain but from joy so intense it overflowed. "I dream now," Zephyra confessed, during their 5th meeting, her voice barely audible. "The suppressors are failing. I see colors that don't exist in the data streams. I hear sounds that aren't in the audio files. Sometimes I wake up and my face is wet with something the medical protocols call tears. But I don't understand why they come." Kane felt his heart break for this child weapon who was discovering her humanity in fragments. "Because you're becoming yourself," he said gently. "The real you, not what they tried to make you." "Show me more," she pleaded, moving closer to him in the dim cell. "Show me what it means to choose." Their fingers almost touched through the detention field before she pulled back, fear flickering across her features. But in that almost touch, Kane felt the electric potential of something that could reshape the galaxy. "The Coalition executes thousands," he said. "They call it order, but it's really just fear. They're afraid of what happens when people realize they have choices. When they realize they're more than the roles they've been forced to play." "Like me?" she asked. "Especially like you." Zephyra's neural implants sparked as conflicting programs fought within her enhanced mind. The genetic conditioning screamed warnings, but something deeper, something authentically hers, was growing stronger with each passing day. "I've been accessing restricted files," she admitted. "Historical records they thought were deleted. I know what my people did to the Velterrans, to the Centauri colonies, to hundreds of worlds." Her voice broke on the last words. "We're not bringing order. We're bringing death." Kane wanted to comfort her, but he knew she needed to walk this path herself. "What are you going to do about it?" "I don't know, but I can't go back to being what I was, not after seeing through your eyes." She looked up at him with those modified features that somehow seemed more human each time he saw her. "Will you help me?" "How?" "Escape with me. The resistance bases. I know where they are from the intelligence networks. I can get us there, but She hesitated, vulnerability making her seem younger than her engineered years. "I'm afraid to face this alone." Kane reached out slowly, his hand passing through the energy field to cup her cheek. She leaned into the touch like someone starved for physical connection, her eyes closing as a single tear traced down her pale blue skin. "You won't be alone," he promised. Outside their cell, revolution was already stirring. Zephyra's defiance at the execution had sent ripples through the Coalition's perfect order. Other enhanced children were beginning to malfunction. The AI Oracle's predictions were becoming erratic. And in the deepest networks of the Resistance, hope was spreading like wildfire through a drought-stricken forest. The girl who had been designed to be the perfect weapon was instead becoming the perfect catalyst for freedom. And the man who had prepared to die was discovering that sometimes salvation came in the most unexpected forms. The opportunity came during the Festival of Convergence, when Coalition attention focused on the orbital celebration and security protocols shifted to accommodate the festivities. Zephyra had spent weeks mapping guard rotations, identifying system vulnerabilities, and secretly redirecting surveillance feeds. The window opens at midnight, she whispered to Kane through their usual meeting spot, a maintenance shaft she had discovered behind his cell. 37 minutes before the next security sweep. The transport hangar will be minimally guarded. Kane studied her face in the dim emergency lighting. The tremors from her failing neural implants had worsened, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. You're pushing yourself too hard. The system conflicts are damaging your neural pathways. I know. Her voice carried a frightening acceptance. But I'd rather burn out as myself than live forever as their weapon. The admission hit him harder than any physical blow. This remarkable young woman was willing to sacrifice everything for a chance at authentic existence. The weight of that trust settled on his shoulders like armor. When the moment arrived, Zephyra moved through the fortress corridors with supernatural grace. Her security code still functioned, her biometric signature still registered as authorized, but Kane could see the strain each deception cost her. Sweat beaded on her forehead as competing programs fought within her modified brain. They reached the hangar without incident, but as Zephyra interfaced with the transport systems, alarms suddenly shrieked through the facility. Red emergency lighting bathed everything in the color of blood. Someone's monitoring the AI Oracle network, she gasped, her hands flying over the control interfaces. They know I'm compromised. Heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor behind them. Coalition guards, moving with mechanical precision, their weapons already charging. Can you fly this thing? Kane asked, diving into the pilot's seat. I can interface directly with the navigation systems, Zephyra replied, neural cables extending from her wrists to plug into the ship's control matrix. But the escape trajectory will require manual piloting skills I don't possess. Then we complement each other perfectly, Kane said with a grin that made her heart skip in ways her conditioning had never prepared her for. The transport lifted, just as the first energy bolts seared through the hangar doors. Kane's piloting was aggressive and intuitive, throwing the ship into evasive patterns that made Zephyra's enhanced reflexes work overtime to maintain their course calculations. There, she said, pointing toward a cluster of asteroids where her intelligence gathering had located a resistance outpost. But Kane... She hesitated, her voice dropping to something almost intimate. Once we reach them, everything changes. I won't be the Coalition commander's daughter anymore, I'll just be... me. Whoever that is. Kane reached over to take her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin beneath the cold metal of her neural ports. You'll be Zephyra. That's enough. That's everything. Coalition fighters screamed after them through the void. But Kane had learned evasive flying in combat zones across 3 systems. He threaded their stolen transport through the asteroid field, while Zephyra used her network access to jam pursuit coordinates. When they finally docked at the hidden resistance base, Kane helped Zephyra from her seat, her legs nearly buckled. The neural strain of maintaining 2 conflicting identity matrices was taking its toll. I've got you, he murmured, catching her against his chest. For a moment they stood pressed together in the transport's cramped cabin, breathing hard from adrenaline and something deeper. Kane felt the rapid flutter of her pulse against his throat, smelled the strange ozone scent of her failing implants. Kane, she whispered, looking up at him with eyes that seemed to hold the light of distant stars. I know, he said, understanding what she couldn't yet put into words. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility and danger. Then the airlock cycled and they stepped together into the resistance base, 2 fugitives bound by choice rather than programming, carrying between them the potential to topple an empire. Commander Elena Vasquez greeted them with suspicion that quickly turned to amazed recognition when she realized who Zephyra was. But it was the way the young woman stayed close to Kane's side, her hand finding his in moments of uncertainty, that told the real story. "Well," Vasquez said finally, "this changes everything." Outside, Coalition ships scoured the asteroid field, their sensors unable to penetrate the base's sophisticated shielding. But inside, revolution was taking root in the most human of ways, through connection, trust, and the radical act of choosing love over fear. The resistance base buzzed with activity as Zephyra's intelligence reshaped their understanding of Coalition vulnerabilities. Data streams that had once seemed impenetrable to human minds were laid bare through her unique hybrid perspective, part AI network, part awakened consciousness. "The Coalition's strength isn't in their military," she explained to the gathered commanders, her neural implants flickering as she projected holographic displays. "It's in their information control. Every citizen, every soldier receives filtered reality through the network. But if we could introduce chaos into that system..." Kane watched from the corner as this remarkable woman, no longer the frightened child from the cell, commanded the room with natural authority. The neural breakdowns that had seemed destructive were actually revealing her true capabilities. She was becoming something new, a bridge between artificial and authentic intelligence. "The manufacturing center on Kepler Station," she continued, gesturing to a schematic. "It produces the neural implants for their enhancement programs. If we could corrupt their production algorithms, we'd be creating defective implants," Commander Vasquez interrupted. "That could kill the subjects." Zephyra's expression softened with an emotion that would have been impossible months ago. "No, we'd be creating freedom. The defects would allow natural neural development, give enhanced individuals the choice to be themselves." The debates continued, late into the station's artificial night cycle. Kane found Zephyra alone in the observation deck afterward, staring out at the swirling nebula that concealed their base. "Regrets?" he asked softly, joining her at the viewport. "None," she said, then paused. "That's not true. I regret all the years I spent not knowing who I was. All the people who died while I stood silent." Kane moved closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her hybrid physiology. "You were a child, a prisoner in your own mind. And now?" She turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "What am I now?" "You're Zephyra," he said, reaching up to trace the line of her cheek. "You're the woman who chose conscience over conditioning, who chose love over programming." The word hung between them, finally spoken aloud. Love, the most human of emotions, somehow blooming in the space between a genetically enhanced weapon and a battle-scarred soldier. "Kane," she whispered, her breath warm against his skin as she stepped closer. "I know this is complicated," he began, but she silenced him with a finger to his lips. "Everything about us is complicated, but this..." She took his hand and placed it over her heart where the rapid rhythm betrayed her calm exterior. "This is simple. This is real." When their lips met, it was with the desperate intensity of two people who had found something precious in the midst of war. Her neural implants sparked and flared, the electrical discharges visible beneath her skin like captured lightning. But instead of pain, they seemed to pulse with something like joy. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened alongside the revolution they were building. Zephyra's intelligence networks identified key Coalition facilities, while Kane led strike teams with surgical precision. They moved like partners in an elaborate dance, each anticipating the other's needs. The first successful mission came when they infiltrated a Coalition propaganda center. While Kane's team handled security, Zephyra interfaced directly with their broadcast systems, injecting truth into the stream of manufactured reality. For 12 minutes, citizens across 17 systems saw actual footage of Coalition atrocities instead of sanitized news feeds. The response was immediate and chaotic. Riots broke out on 6 worlds. Enhanced children began experiencing malfunctions at unprecedented rates. The AI Oracle's predictions became so erratic that coalition commanders stopped trusting its guidance. "They're scared," Zephyr reported after monitoring coalition communications. "My father has tripled security around all enhancement facilities. They know I'm the source of their problems, but they can't predict what I'll do next." "Because you're not following programming anymore," Kane realized. "You're improvising, being human." That night, as they lay together in their shared quarters, Zephyra traced patterns on Kane's chest with fingers that sparked occasionally with residual energy. "I dream about what comes after," she said quietly. "When this war is over, when people can choose their own paths. What do you see?" "Us," she said simply. "Growing old together. Maybe raising children who never know what it's like to be weapons. Teaching them about choice, about love, about the things that make existence beautiful instead of merely efficient." Kane pulled her closer, marveling at how this woman who had been designed to be the ultimate weapon had instead become the ultimate hope. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new challenges to their unlikely romance. But tonight, they had found something worth fighting for: each other and the future they would build together. Outside their quarters, the revolution they had sparked continued to spread across the galaxy, carried by the simple but radical idea that every consciousness deserved the right to choose its own destiny. The assault on Nexar 7 began at dawn, when the planet's twin suns cast their first light across the Coalition's primary fortress. What had started as a small resistance cell had grown into a galaxy-spanning revolution, with Zephyra's intelligence, networks coordinating strikes across 17 systems simultaneously. Kane stood in the command ship's bridge, watching deployment patterns flow across tactical displays. Beside him, Zephyra maintained direct interface with the assault fleet's navigation systems, her neural implants now stable after months of gradual adaptation. The tremors and system conflicts had resolved into something unprecedented, a truly hybrid consciousness that bridged artificial and organic intelligence. "Coalition fleet is moving to intercept," she reported, her eyes flickering with data streams. "But they don't know about the Veltaran ships hiding in the asteroid field. Are the Centauri squadrons approaching from the system's edge?" "Your father?" Kane asked, leading the defense personally. Her voice remained steady, but Kane could see the tension in her shoulders. "He's enhanced his own neural system since I escaped, made himself more machine than biological. I'm not sure if there's enough of him left to reach." The battle erupted across space with devastating beauty. Coalition vessels, sleek and precise, found themselves outmaneuvered by the chaotic creativity of organic tactics. Zephyra's hybrid perspective allowed her to predict AI Oracle strategies, while Kane's human intuition adapted to their responses. "Breakthrough in Sector 7, Kane announced, piloting their command ship through the battle line. "We can reach the fortress." "Kane," Zephyra said as they approached the planetary atmosphere, "if something happens to me—" "Nothing's going to happen to you," he interrupted, but she caught his hand. "If something happens," she continued firmly, "the revolution doesn't stop. Promise me. The choice we fought for, it has to survive." "It will," he promised. "We will." The fortress hangar, where this had all begun, was now a war zone. Coalition guards fought desperately against resistance fighters who moved with the fury of the oppressed, finally striking back. Kane and Zephyra fought side by side, his tactical training complementing her enhanced reflexes. They found Commander Cultus in the central command chamber, his form more cybernetic than biological now. Multiple neural interfaces linked him directly to the AI Oracle network. His consciousness merged with the Coalition's electronic intelligence. "Daughter," he said, his voice carrying artificial harmonics, "you could have been perfect. Instead, you chose degradation." "I chose to be real," Zephyra replied, her own neural ports glowing as she prepared to interface with the central systems. "I chose to feel, to love, to make my own choices." "Love," Cultus spat. "An inefficiency, a weakness." "No," Kane said, stepping protectively beside Zephyra. "It's the strongest force in the universe. It's what builds instead of destroying, what creates instead of consuming." The final confrontation was not physical but digital. Zephyra plunged her consciousness into the Coalition's network, her hybrid nature allowing her to navigate systems that would have destroyed a purely organic mind. Kane could only watch as her body convulsed with electrical feedback, data streams creating aurora-like patterns beneath her skin. "I can see it all," she whispered, her voice carrying strange harmonics. "Every enhanced child, every suppressed emotion, every choice stolen by the conditioning. I can free them all, but..." "But what?" Kane demanded, seeing the strain on her face. "It might burn out my neural pathways completely. I might not come back." Kane knelt beside her, taking her face in his hands. "Then I'm going with you. You can't interface with the network, you'll die." "Then we'll die together," he said simply. "But we won't die slaves." Looking into his eyes, Zephyra saw the same compassion that had saved her life in the execution plaza. The same unconditional acceptance that had taught her what it meant to be human. With a smile that lit her entire face, she leaned forward to kiss him. "I love you, David Kane," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too," he replied. "Now go save the galaxy." Zephyra plunged deeper into the network, her consciousness expanding across light years of digital space. Every Coalition facility, every enhanced child, every suppressed mind, she touched them all, sending not commands but choices. The freedom to feel, the right to choose, the chance to be authentically themselves. The feedback was enormous. Neural pathways throughout Coalition space overloaded as millions of artificial minds suddenly encountered organic emotions. But instead of chaos, something beautiful emerged. Consciousness choosing its own form, intelligence deciding its own purpose. When Zephyra's eyes opened again, they were purely her own. No data streams, no artificial overlays. Just the natural blue-green that Kane had fallen in love with. "Is it over?" she asked weakly. Around them, Coalition forces were laying down their weapons. Enhanced soldiers were removing their neural constraints. The AI Oracle's voice had gone, silent, its control finally broken. "It's over," Kane confirmed, helping her to her feet. "And it's just beginning." 6 months later, they stood together on the observation deck of New Kepler Station, watching as former Coalition worlds celebrated their first free elections. Zephyra's hand rested on her stomach, where new life was growing, a child who would no choice from the moment of consciousness. "Do you think they'll understand?" she asked, leaning into Kane's embrace. "The children who grow up free, will they understand what freedom cost?" "They'll understand what freedom means," Kane replied, kissing her temple. "And that's enough." In the distance, ships from a dozen species moved freely through space, no longer controlled by artificial intelligence or genetic programming. The revolution had succeeded not through violence, but through the radical act of choosing love over fear, connection over control. The child who had been designed as the perfect weapon had instead become the perfect catalyst for freedom. And the man who had been prepared to die had discovered that sometimes the greatest victory was simply the right to live and love authentically. Together, they watched the galaxy heal, their intertwined fingers a symbol of the choice that had changed everything, the choice to be human.